What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another episode of the How Good Is Your Overwatch League team series. We're down to the final stretch, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few more episodes to go. This time around, we're going to be featuring the Hangzhou Spark, who had quite the productive offseason. Let's find out why as we first start with what they got rid of. Before getting into the action though, here's a quick word from today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by DraftBuff. DraftBuff is an online fantasy platform for esports. They have leagues for Overwatch, Call of Duty, CSGO, Rainbow Six Siege, and League of Legends. If you have never tried fantasy esports before, you should definitely give it a shot. Try it with your friends, or with a community you're a part of, or even just join a random league for fun. It's completely free and you get to draft your own custom teams. You can download the app to enjoy all the fun game modes on your tablet and or mobile devices, or you can try out their new and improved website. Now you can join leagues, draft teams, and change your lineups directly from the website. When you're signed up, it's really simple. Simply pick the esport you're interested in, then click on create your own league, find a league, or quick join a league, and you're on your way. Focusing on the Overwatch aspect of it, there's a lot of cool features and different game modes to try out. The big one is their standard season-long fantasy leagues, where you draft your own custom team with as few as 4 people and as many as 10. I made a league with some random bots just to show what it's like, and it's very simple. Schedule the time and date you want to draft, adjust the settings in any way you see fit, then get to drafting. If you and some Overwatch League loving friends are looking for a fun way to compete with each other this year, or you're simply looking for a way to elevate your passion for esports, DraftBuff is the way to go. Check out the link in the description to download the app or play through their website today. Big shout out goes to DraftBuff for sponsoring this video, and now on to the content. So the first thing they decided to do was drop a bombshell by getting rid of 5 players all at once, being Rhea, Bebe, Adora, Otto, and Sasin. A few of these guys I think it might be a little sad to see them go because they had a lot of potential, but with others it's just like, whatever. Like with Sasin, Otto, and Adora, for example, because while I like all of them, none of them were really doing this team any favors. Sasin was basically there just to play as a replacement in a way because Rhea was dealing with wrist injuries at the time, so he kind of just had to step into a role he isn't absurdly comfortable on. We saw him play Sigma, he was just okay at that. His Zarya was decent as well, I guess, but once Kyoku came on the team and they got a real off tank, his job was kind of over and he really wasn't of use anymore. Adora also saw some playtime, especially towards the earlier stages of the season before they got Architect, but now that they have Architect, they don't have a big use for him anymore because Architect can basically play anything he can, but better. Not to mention that outside of Echo, Adora's play really just wasn't what it was a year prior. I feel like in Season 2 he was a solid option, but this year he kind of held the team back when he was in the game, so it was probably the right move to move on from him. Then of course there is, in my opinion, the most expected departure out of the 3 I just mentioned, that being Otto, and the reason I say that is because I'm pretty sure he played like 1 or maybe 2 maps at most. He was basically there just to be a roster placeholder. It hurts me to say it a ton, but it's not like the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons days. He's no longer a hero. He hasn't been able to replicate that level of play ever since leaving that team. On the Justice, it was a complete failure. He couldn't be what everyone wanted him to be, and then on the Spark, he was basically just a reserve, so there was no point in keeping him any longer. Let's talk about the more significant departures though, Rhea and Bebe, because these are 2 of the OG members of this roster as well, and they both were actually decent contributors throughout their careers on this team. I'd say Bebe more so because he actually played both years. Rhea had that unfortunate wrist injury going on, but they both did have their bright spots. Rhea was really good in Season 2, not quite top tier, just behind that, but still one of the better off tanks in the league nonetheless. He was a lot of fun to watch during that point in time, and I think a lot of people, including myself, expected him to be a staple alongside Gushue for many years to come. But sadly, fate had other plans in store for this man because of the wrist injury that happened, plus him not playing all that well at the beginning of the season when he did actually play. He couldn't really return to his former glory. Then they signed Kyoku as a replacement, and that was the end basically. That was it. Now shifting our attention over to Bebe, when you look back at his career on the Spark, it had a very up and down type of trajectory going on. It was a massive roller coaster ride, if you will. In the end, I think it was the right move to get rid of him, but all I'm saying is there definitely is potential and promise with him. I think that's a good reason why you saw the Justice pick him up, but just looking back at it, I think in Season 2, he started off struggling a little bit, then he started to find his groove, then he kept going back and forth, couldn't really figure it out, but then I think by the end of Season 2, he was finally starting to consistently get into his groove, if you will. It looked like he might be able to improve heading into Season 3 and be a better player, but then he kind of regressed and kind of followed a similar trend. They gave him 2 years to figure it out, but he just couldn't do it. And at that point, that's way too much time. You can't hold on to him for another year just to have him maybe pan out. You got to make changes there, because if you don't, you're going to end up in the same situation. If the Spark want to improve, then flex support was a position they definitely needed to address. So good on them for moving on from Bebe. So yeah, moving on from all of those guys, it's a very sad time if you're a big time fan of the Spark, but all of these moves are worthwhile in the end. But those weren't the only guys to leave the team. Along with them, QOQ, their midseason pickup, also would get the boot, surprisingly. I don't know how all of you watching feel, but I personally thought he was pretty solid. He wasn't amazing, he wasn't blowing your socks off and just dominating everybody on a game-to-game basis, but for what he came into as a mid-season pickup, having to adjust to a system real quick in a tough situation, I thought he did a pretty good job. He proved himself both on Zarya and Sigma, and I think with enough time, another year under the system, he could have become a star potentially. I guess he really just was a substitute at the end of the day. He had his purpose, he served it, and then they were ready to get rid of him. He was basically just a panic pickup that they needed to make because off-tank was a mess for them at the time. He wasn't the true person they really wanted. I guess he just didn't synergize and fit the system enough. I'm hoping that one day he gets another shot at the Overwatch League because I personally think that he deserves it. But anyway, that's all the departures, no coaches left or anything, so now let's talk about some new players that they got. The first new player to join the Spark would be Shy. Those who pay attention to the Chinese scene are going to portray their excitement over this move. Shy's been a pretty phenomenal hit scan ever since making the transition from flex support. What also makes the decision so appealing is the fact that he is being promoted from the Spark's Academy team. It makes this an all-around good pickup, which gives the Spark more weapons on their DPS line. But some of you may be asking, if he's so good, how come it took him this long to make it into the league? Well, to put it simply, he did not meet the league's age requirements. He only turned 18 back in October, but now that he's here, you gotta keep him on your radar. He's got a Widow, a McCree, and a Tracer among a few other things. The Spark could honestly utilize him in a few different ways. He could be there just for a constant starter, but there's also a lot of other options. If the Spark want to run a mostly Chinese lineup, he gives them that chance. If they need a deadly double sniper or double hit scan combo, he's their man. I'm a big fan of this decision. You guys know me. I love it when a team has options. I'm also a sucker for homegrown talent. I'm super excited to see what this guy can do. Hopefully the Spark don't just keep him on the bench though. While we're on the topic of Chinese talent, the Spark also signed League, the big name off-tank out of Team CC. The fact that the Spark were able to snag him away from a team like Chengdu, who really could have used his help, is incredible. I'm a fan of this pickup for sure. I mean, for one, he's an absolute freak, and I mean that in the best way possible. I know that Team CC roster was very stacked, but he more than pulled his weight on a game-to-game basis. Some may argue he was the clear-cut best off-tank in all of Contenders. His play is very clean and refined, and I would argue his best hero is probably Sigma, but he's pretty reliable from top to bottom in general. Let's not forget how much this is going to benefit Guxue though. He's never had the pleasure of playing alongside a Chinese off-tank at the Overwatch League level before. That could mean that Guxue sees improvement simply because he's more likely to be on the same page with his tank partner. The Spark pretty much solved their entire off-tank problem with this one move alone. But I guess one off-tank wasn't enough, hence why they also made the move for Bernard, who the London Spitfire were looking to shop. Absolutely crazy stuff here. Bernard didn't get nearly enough love last season because his team simply was not relevant. He's got what it takes to be a star in this league because his skill has been present for many years. The consistency has slowly been building up as well, he's just been lacking the correct resources. The Spark could be the answer to his problem. I know I said that Guxue and League could be a really good duo, but the same is going to hold true if you replace League with Bernard. JMac was indecisive at times last year, but that's not going to be a problem with Guxue. A more confident and skilled support line is also going to work wonders, and I'm a firm believer that having League 4 competition is going to be very nice. It'll keep both of them sharp, and it'll motivate both of these two players to improve. Speaking of Guxue and main tanks, how about the addition of Takoyaki? It's been a while since Guxue was not the only option at main tank, and to be honest, I'm all for it. Takoyaki might not be as skilled overall, but I suspect that he still could be of use in one or maybe two different ways. Either he comes in for synergy purposes if the Spark wish to utilize a fully, if not mostly Korean lineup, and or he handles the Orisa duties since Guxue is noticeably worse on that hero compared to his Winston and Reinhardt. I'm expecting Takoyaki probably to still mostly have a bench role, at least at the start of the year, but you never know what could happen. Again, depending on what the Spark want to run, he might end up being their best option. As a bonus, again, this is great for competition. I see no problem in the Spark making this move. Guxue might not be on this team forever, so so it's a good idea to start looking for potential replacements. Next up on the list will be the addition of MCD, the replacement for Bebe. My general thoughts are that this is an okay pickup. Not life-changing where they have this guaranteed god gamer or anything, but someone with promise, no doubt. He played on Element Mystic for over a year, and he showcased skills that you're looking for at the Overwatch League level. The main takeaway of this move from a positive standpoint is that it gives the Spark someone fresh to work with. I really don't know how good of a replacement MCD is going to be, but it's definitely better than risking it all on another year of Bebe. The confidence people are going to have in this rookie will probably vary from person to person, but what matters is that he's a new face who just might bring newfound life to the support line. The Spark can experiment to see what he does the best with, then go from there. His participation could end up being meta-dependent though, because there are some characters he could probably use a little bit of work on. That's all I've got to say about MCD though, so let's talk about the final offseason acquisition. That's right, I'm talking about Su. Not gonna lie, it's very cool to see this guy back in the league. He absolutely deserves another crack at it because he really did not deserve to see it end the way it did on Vancouver. But the thing is, he might be one of the biggest wildcard pickups of the entire offseason. What can I seriously expect Su to bring to this team? How much will he realistically play? And more importantly, what will he play? The only things we've seen him play a fair amount of so far at the Overwatch League level are Zarya, Reaper, and McCree. Just when we were starting to see what else he could play, the Titans imploded and that was it. So I'm kind of at a loss right now. Maybe he could be a good but also niche flex option for Rush comps or Zarya, but what else would he do? Would it be a better option than the likes of Godsby, Shy, and Architect? I would guess no. I'm very curious to see if he can contribute more than I'm assuming he's going to. But yeah, that's basically everything, so that concludes what the Spark were up to this offseason. Out of all teams, they were one of the most successful, I would say. They by no means became instant title contenders, but they made some noticeable improvements. They have more of the tools needed to output a more stable and consistent season compared to what they did 1 year prior. So for that, I'm giving them an A as their offseason grade. They might not have acquired a bunch of guaranteed big-name superstars, but they handled a lot of stuff the right way. They ditched all of the things they no longer needed and got replacements that could be really good. And of course, they also improved the general size of their roster big time. A 12-player roster that is suited for many different metas and situations could prove to be very useful. There's a lot of room for experimentation here. 2 main supports, 2 flex supports, 2 main tanks, 2 off tanks, and 4 DPS. The potential combinations and ability to fill out holes is practically limitless. Think about what they could do. If they want to go mixed with Korean and Chinese players in the lineup, then that's fine. If they feel it would be best to run a fully Korean or Chinese tank line or support line, let's say, then they have that luxury. Plus, there's all the individual hero coverage options you have out there, like running Takoyaki over Gushue and Orisa, or maybe like Mika over IDK on Mercy, just to name a few examples. I'm super happy for Gushue as well. Having more players who can easily understand his callouts could benefit him amazingly. There's up to 5 Chinese players total on that roster now, and all of them could end up seeing a fair amount of playtime this year. Think about all of the good players they maintained as well. They still have reliable playmakers in Architect, Gushue, Godsby, IDK, and Mika on hand. Combining that with an infusion of youth sounds pretty promising, so as a result, I'm feeling good about the Spark. I predict that they finish anywhere from 12th through 8th place in the overall standings. I could definitely see them being in contention for a playoff spot this year simply because of how deep they are. Realistically speaking, they could be as good as the second best team in Asia, I would say, if things go their way. But as much as I do like this Spark team, they aren't what I consider to be contenders. For one, there's not enough star power. The tanks look pretty good. I'm relatively satisfied with what they're working with there. However, support may end up being an issue against the higher tier rosters. MCD and Coldest have promise, but are they going to be able to keep pace with the likes of Izayaki, Jonek, Alarm, or even Farway 1987? I really don't know, so I have concerns about that. There also may be some issues with their DPS getting outplayed at times. Strictly thinking about it from playing in the Asian Conference, it won't be too bad. I think they might be just fine against a majority of their opponents. But what happens when playoffs roll around? What happens if they make it out of Asia in a regular season tournament? I feel like they don't have what it takes to keep pace. My other issue comes through the coaching, more specifically, the direction they took at head coach. Everyone always says that Pajan is overrated, and if that's the case, he might hold this team back in those close matches that could play a pivotal role in this team qualifying for tournaments and the playoffs for that matter. But generally speaking, I could see the Spark still having a respectable year. They've got a nice looking roster from a general standpoint. It's very well equipped to deal with many situations that could end up coming their way. This year could help them figure out a lot of the things about their future. It can establish what pieces that could help them win a championship, or even just what kind of roster they want to play with in general moving forward. It could be a good year for the Spark for many different reasons, full of learning processes. Regardless of what happens though, I have faith that they can perform at least a little bit better than in Season 3. They could genuinely be a threat to most, if not all, of the teams in their region, so I recommend giving the Spark at least a little bit of your respect, or you might just end up regretting it. And that concludes my off-season recap and team preview of the Hangzhou Spark. I hope you enjoyed it, but now I want to hear from you. Do you believe in the Spark, or do you think they're overrated? Let me know down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate your support, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.